Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is the December 1st, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Paul and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that are located in the upper left-hand corner that say Start Here, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. It's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 21 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files that shows just like this one from that web page, in which people, just like you, have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to those even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also email us. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And or if you're interested, you can join us live if you're available most weekdays from 11 a.m. till noon Central Time. Go to zoom.us and tell them you want to join a meeting and enter the meeting ID number 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. If you join through that meeting ID on a phone, you'll be automatically muted, and the toggle switch to toggle in and out of mute is *6. And we hope you'll unmute and speak up, because it makes it far easier for us to live into our intention with this work when we know how these things are landing for you. And when we were talking the last time we were talking on Wednesday, I was sharing about the book, the podcast from We Can Do Hard Things, where they were interviewing Megan Watterson, and then a book by Megan Watterson titled The Girl Who Baptized Herself, and that's talking about, the book of Paul and Thecla. And it's really powerful to take the time to understand, to read perspectives that weren't written from the people in power, to go back and look to uncover what's an actual history that we can validate actually happened in a certain way. And when you start doing that and you understand that so much of what we've been programmed to believe in our lives has just been made up by other people, and much of it is detrimental to our own functioning, that's mind-blowing to me. And I've encountered it a number of different times in my life. I still remember the shock that settled in when I realized that most of what I read in my American history books in school, in grade school and high school, most of it was absolutely fictitious accounts that were, embellished and expanded in many ways with poetic license, but then just reported as though they were the truth. And I was shocked. I thought, wait a minute, how could it be that what I'm being taught in school is a lie, essentially? And yet, that was the beginning of me learning to open up and question pretty much everything that I'd learned in school, especially from the historical accounts, and to do a little research to find out, okay, so who wrote this historical account and who benefits by people just blindly believing it or accepting it? And that's the kind of thing that I encourage people to keep that frame of reference in mind if you go and listen to or read a book like The Girl Who Baptized Herself, because you'll start to get a different perspective on what we've been told is just the way things are. And it's not just the way things are. It's all been made up, and it benefits a particular group of people far more than the others. And it distorts our true nature. It distorts our willingness to see our competence. It distorts our willingness to turn inside and trust the internal guidance system that we've been given. And that is never a good thing, right? I mean, I think it was Muhammad who said, or Martin Luther who said, it would not be right or safe to go against my conscience. Yeah, so most of what we're taught in our schools, aside from those blessed places where there's still some focus on pure science, but most of what we're taught in our schools is all about beliefs and dogmas and distractions, and it's all about materialistic and external focus, which does not give us access to our greatest gifts, to our awareness of ourselves, to our higher wisdom, etc., etc. So, we have plenty of time for comments and questions. We have people have had their holiday week. We've had some very powerful sessions that have happened from people who've been in the intensives and then had time on Michael's show last week. So we have plenty of time for comments or questions. I had a bit of writing I did after listening to one of the shows. I don't remember where I put it. It had to do with the idea of whether or not we use the word vulnerability. And some of the writing I did had to do with acknowledging, there's at least two different ways we want to look at this. One is we want to look at, will I use a word link or some other tool to identify and then dismantle negative associations that I have in my mind? So in my way of thinking, if I say I am vulnerable to something, it means I'm focusing more on the physical and not the whole experience of life, not my true nature as this consciousness or soul or spirit or awareness, whatever you want to call it. Because that the essence of that, consciousness, soul, spirit, is not vulnerable, can't ever be harmed. So when I wake up and recognize that I'm using a word like that, it might benefit me to, in line with Dr. Michael Ryce's programming our minds with our thoughts, right? Regulatory speech, this whole concept of how if I keep pouring my mind energy into something, it's a creative force. So if I pour my mind energy into thoughts that I am vulnerable and can be hurt and I'm in danger or I'm in a precarious position, that's mistaken energy. So from this perspective, we're not talking about doing any worksheets. We're not talking about using any other tools other than maybe a word link to change what's the association in my mind. If I'm open, is that associated with, danger, or do I associate openness with perfect safety? And if I use a word like vulnerable, and I'm one of those people who's been trained into the idea that the word vulnerable means that a thing or a person can be hurt or damaged, then I want to reprogram myself so I'm thinking in terms of my true nature as totally safe. As that within which all of this other stuff I'm aware of is arising. And so all of this other stuff, rather than being a threat to me, is like clouds passing through the sky of my awareness. And even if it provides, damage or injury to my physical self or to my bank account, it's not harming me at my core. So that's one aspect of this. The other aspect of it is that we acknowledge that if I've already got associations for the word vulnerable, and it's loaded up with all kinds of negativity, when I put that on a mind shifter or I put that in a worksheet, it helps me resonate all of the negative associations that come with that so I can start to dismantle them. So both can be true. And the bit of writing that I had done on it was related to the idea that if I can acknowledge that my illusion of separation and that my illusion that I might get hurt or that I am vulnerable to being hurt, if that's been in my mind a while, and there's that thought pattern that I've put so much energy into, it's going to take great courage for me to step forward and do the next right thing if my mind is telling me that it's dangerous to do that and I might get hurt when I do that. So I acknowledge that it may take great courage for me to do that because I'm generating fear through what Michael Ryce would call a thought disorder. A thought disorder that says there's something of value for me to lose or something of value that is going to be prevented from me acquiring it, and therefore I am not whole and complete within myself. Based on that thought disorder, then it is quite a challenge and creates quite a bit of need for courage for somebody to step into the next right thing, or being wide open and deeply honest or radically honest. So, just hoping that's making some sense. On the one hand, I really do want to reprogram myself so that I take the word vulnerable out of any reference of thought I have toward myself and others. And I also want to be able to use the word as a tool to resonate the garbage I might have downloaded over the years or that might have been shoved into my intellect over the years so I can see it and dismantle it and or dismantle its potential to negatively affect me.
Thank you so much for that. And you must have read my mind.
Don't spread
You're
it around.
amazing. I know I'm
I don't want
spotting you
people to know that
now.
I'm a psychic, but you know. How so?
That's
How?
exactly, you give from the inside of the looking glass of experiencing exactly that. It's like coming up against cognitive dissonance of emotions because, the program is the vulnerability to be open wide, that's not safe. That isn't, the wiring is there that it's not safe, and yet being asked to step forward and trust in the world and being open, knowing that you're perfectly safe. I can feel that that's my ongoing practice. And it is extremely, I want to use the word vulnerable, but it takes thank you for the courage. It does take courage because I have to face that all the time.
Right.
All the time.
And it's important to understand that it doesn't take courage unless I buy into the belief that I am not safe.
Yeah, and part of me still has that
absolutely,
belief.
we all do, and we've been programmed to it, and we've got trauma energy that's been downloaded, and then adaptive responses to that will lead us to believe that we're not safe. And then if we see the true nature of it and how it got created, now we can dismantle it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I am at this moment. I would say for the last year and a half, probably before that. And I think I mentioned working with Dane Stevens. That was very helpful, doing to the deep inner child work. That allowed me to even be in a space that I would even consider that the world is safe. So and also I loved how you said when you're putting in the term vulnerability into a worksheet, so it resonates all the thought disorders that are hidden behind, or the energy behind that word of being vulnerable. And it's funny because there's vulnerability, when naturally my brain goes, vulnerability is danger. But yet there's vulnerability of being open and being intimate, showing up and being in presence, but my mind automatically defaults to the danger side. And then I have to pull it back to, wait a minute, there's the other side of vulnerability. It creates more space for connection. And where we get to show up and be in a state of vulnerability and being known. And there's a part of me that I think all of us want to be known for who we truly are. And that takes vulnerability to show up and just be open. This is who I am and this is what I'm about. And to be present in that and rest in our own nature in doing that. That's where I'm at now. So.
The writing that I did, I just found it is, what if we just acknowledge that we're totally safe? And that we create the illusion of vulnerability. Once we create the illusion of vulnerability, we create a plethora of associations which seem to us to prove that we're at risk, prove that we're in danger. Once this illusion is believed, it takes great courage to step into the illusion while holding the belief that we are going to do something that will lead us to great harm. So in truth, we can't ever be vulnerable because who we are, our true nature, our essence, is beyond harm. Now, to get there, you got to adopt something other than just the materialistic perspective, right? You got to understand there's more here than just a hunk of protoplasm. So if we go into situations open, wide open, to experiencing whatever unfolds, while staying conscious of our true nature and our total safety, if we can do that, we'll be able to feel the fear that we generate because we're buying into the illusion and move forward in doing the next right thing.
Brilliant. And I realized, we are creating our own world, and we create the dragons we see. And it's all just facing the dragon, and puff, it disappears moment by moment. So that's very helpful. I'll take that this week and, in the future, that you gave language and you just constructed it in a way that I could really receive it. So thank you.
Well, and, it's about the other aspect of it for me that is important when people start discussing this stuff, and they're basically without realizing it. I mean, this has come up a couple times since the intensive with people talking about things. You're basically learning a different language, right? In various ways. I'm not talking about just Aramaic, ancient Aramaic words. I mean, in general, the whole thing, that the language that will change the frame of reference from the outside event is causing my emotions to I'm the one creating it in here, and then projecting it into my mind's image of what's out there. That's like a new language. That's so radically different a perspective than what most people have been raised to. It's like learning a new language. And every time somebody does that, they're still bringing the bulk of what their previous language was and understandings into the discussion. So if you got one person, another one over here, another one over here, now you've got 6 or 7 different meanings for each word that's being used, and people light up thinking they're agreeing to something when they've got 5 or 6 different meanings for what's being said. But as long as it's within that narrow range of compatibility, we just pat each other on the back and say, yes, this is wonderful, and I'm so glad you agree with me. But we're not really looking at what did we do? What meaning have we created and assigned to these words that's still keeping us stuck? And that radical inquiry, the willingness to look and question every belief, every dogma, is essential in beginning to unravel the causal nature of these things we don't like. Right? The suffering that I throw on top of the pain that life has brought me, that's optional. Welcome, Susan Bingham. Are you unmuting to chime in?
I didn't unmute. Does it show that I unmuted? Now
no,
I
it just shows your face, and so.
Oh, finally get to see you. What you look like. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're an actual real person.
I am I didn't mean to do that. I don't feel presentable.
Okay,
but anyway.
Well, you are, and you're here, and you don't need to stay if you're in the middle of something else. I just saw the camera come on and thought I'd give you the option.
Oh, that's so weird. I'm looking for a letter on my phone. I'm supposed to send somebody something ASAP, so I was multitasking.
Okay, well, go ahead
You're meant to be on screen.
What did you say?
You're meant to be on screen. It's time.
It's time.
Shine that beautiful light into the world. Just
right. Well, okay. Thank you.
Yay!
I'm going to get rid of my face now.
All right.
There. Whoops. Yeah.
So, yeah, well, whatever you did, you didn't get rid of your face, just so you know. Just so that the camera's still on so that we won't see anything untoward.
Don't worry. It's too cold to do any stripping or anything.
All right. Okay.
All right. Well, it's good to be back. I wanted to ask you, Tim Hayes.
Go right ahead. Yes.
I said to you, and we're still on the topic, Susan Fluick, but I just had to say, you sent me a text that said, no radio show today. I have better things to do, or I have something better to do. And I thought, chopped liver department, have to do a wake-up sheet.
I think it probably said, I got a better offer.
Yeah, same idea.
Yeah, but it's not that the current offer has any low value.
Well, you know what I do with stuff.
I don't know what you do with stuff, but thanks for letting me know. And now I'll be happy to support you in a worksheet if you'd like.
I already did it. I went right to it.
Was it useful?
It was. Basically, it's good to be reminded of being chopped liver, because it's a diminishment of the overbearing ego that takes a long time to die. And it's not going to die totally, because we need it to function. But
well, yeah, and it's not about it dying. It's about me creating a different, more practical, useful relationship with it, right? It's like the way of mastery in the first lesson, where it says, look, you weren't designed to have that little brain in your head be your primary user interface. That little brain in your head and all of the thoughts that you accumulate about it, that's the ego we're talking about.
Yeah.
It wasn't designed to be your primary sense of self.
Yes, the saying, do the right thing for the wrong reason, comes to mind a lot these days. There's so many things that I did really well in my life I wasn't doing for the right reason. And there's nothing wrong with that, except it ultimately does not bear fruit. Ultimately, that piece of fruit shrivels up and dies, and you find out something else. You go somewhere else eventually, because it's not going to feed you. Anyway, that's going way off a tangent. You were talking about vulnerability and openness, and you made that distinction on the radio show a couple of times ago. I think it's essential, because the word vulnerable just has connotations in our minds. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out that, the point Michael was making is just related to, if I have negative associations with that word, I want to put that in a mind shifter or on a worksheet over and over again, so I resonate into activity all of the negative associations that I've gotten downloaded around that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm doing that, and I'm willing to put that on use that word vulnerable or vulnerability in my worksheet or in my targeted journaling, the mind shifter. I'm also going to be working within my present moment awareness with my regulatory speech to shift it over to something that works better for me. The one that works really well for me is to simply substitute the word open for the word vulnerable.
Oh, that's a great substitution. Suddenly you're healthy again, right there. You just are reminded of your wholeness, and you can choose to be open or not. I like that. So I had another question now that you got me talking.
All right.
The carbon-based memory implies, the idea of the carbon-based memory, or the concept, implies erroneous takes on things, perceptions. If we
hold on. I am not certain that in the context of Dr. Michael Ryce's work, what you just said is accurate.
I'm not certain either. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it doesn't imply error.
Yeah.
It implies this very simple tool. Remember how in the first lesson of Way of Mastery it says very stupid servant?
Yeah.
It didn't mean in a pejorative negative way. It just meant, listen, it's like a hammer or a saw or a shovel. It only does what it is used to do. It only does what it's been programmed to. It's a very narrow, limited utility. And that's what's being pointed at when we talk about the carbon-based memory. It's just like the hard drive in a computer. All it can do is record what's poured into it and then spit it back out when it's called up.
So perception is the secondary thing then. We are just gathering information. That's the carbon-based memory. Then, out of that, depending on our generational stuff, we make interpretations that may or may not be accurate. They could be accurate. They could be reality, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, good. Got it. Okay, that's very helpful.
Yeah. And there's this other word that you used, this perception word.
Mm-hmm.
That, in the way we're using it, perception is a process.
And
Okay.
it's not accurate.
Well, it can be.
Well,
Right?
that's nice.
Like
I didn't know that
Michael Ryce says, here is this spiritual faculty of true perception. So he puts that word in there to try to qualify it. However, we want to understand that the guidance system that's built into us, that's there to help us figure out, have we accurately understood, experienced, or perceived what's going on? The alarm system for that is inside us. Any stress, any tension, any upset, any negative emotion is there to tell us, Tim, right now you're misusing your mind energy to create a perception that's off the mark, and I'm here to alert you to that fact, whether I'm depression, or I'm anger, or I'm sadness, or I'm fear. So the process, it is simply a process, that this thing we call perception. And what was the other point I was going to make? And there's the alarm system to let us know when we're doing it accurately or less than accurately.
Excellent. Okay. Okay. So it isn't the carbon-based memory that shoots out an erroneous...
That is a problem. It just shoots out whatever's been programmed into it.
Got it.
And we have really, really, really been programmed to put a lot of inaccurate stuff into that, what Michael would call the file system.
Good. Thanks. All right, I will mute.
All right, we will allow this.
Thank you.
All right, so questions, comments, reactions from anybody else? We've had a few people join, and we were just going over some of the notes I had written on listening back to some of the podcast episodes or the Mindshifter radio episodes that have happened in the second hour last week, since people were returning from their intensive experience. And one of them was some thoughts about the issue of vulnerability versus openness in terms of how we use those words and what meanings we give them. So I had another piece of writing that I wanted to share. It's a story about a woman who read Darwin's book, Origin of Species, and wrote a rebuttal to it that really was so point on that Charles Darwin never rebutted it, never even mentioned it. So here's the article. Darwin declared women intellectually inferior. This ties in with some writing that I was sharing a couple of weeks ago from the woman who's written the book, Rebecca Solnit, who wrote the book Men Explain Things to Me. And she's done a lot of writing about how important it is for us to unravel the false perceptions and the beliefs that now basically govern our perceptions about male and female. and how in Rebecca Solnit's article, she talks about how men created standards, just made them up, and standards that favor men over women, and then said, you see, these are the divine, these are the natural law experience, this is the actual value that was given by others to men to make them more valuable than women, etc. It's all made up. It's just all made up. Well, here's a specific example of that. So that was something that was pointed out in Rebecca Solnit's book, Men Explain Things to Me. And now here's an article about a woman who read Darwin's book, The Origin of the Species, and then wrote a response titled The Descent of Man. Here's the article. Darwin declared women intellectually inferior. So this woman spent 4 years building a rebuttal that was so devastating that Darwin never bothered to respond. In 1871, Charles Darwin published The Descent of Man and declared under the banner of science that, quote, women are biologically and intellectually inferior to men, close quotes. He argued that evolution had produced men who were more courageous, inventive, and intelligent, while women had evolved to be more emotional, nurturing, and limited in abstract thought. That is such a powerful line. Darwin argued that women were more limited in abstract thought. He insisted that these were not cultural beliefs, which of course they are. He insisted that they were scientific facts, which of course they are not. And the Victorian society that he was in embraced his conclusions because it was patriarchal and it favored the people who were already in power. Scholars cited him, doctors invoked him, politicians weaponized his words against women's education and suffrage. Darwin's authority transformed ancient prejudice into, quote, proof, close quotes. One woman refused to let that stand. Her name was Antoinette Brown Blackwell. And by 1871, she had already made history. In 1953, at the age of 28, she became the first woman ordained as a minister in the United States, stepping into a pulpit that centuries of theology insisted belonged only to men. But Antoinette was never content to stay in one lane. Her mind ranged across philosophy, theology, and the emerging science of evolution. When Darwin published Origin of the Species in 1859, she read it closely. In 1869, she published Studies in General Science, one of the first serious American engagements with evolutionary theory, and remarkably, by a self-taught woman scientist. Then came the book The Descent of Man in 1871, and Darwin's claim that women were evolutionarily inferior. Antoinette rushed to analyze this, and she refused to accept it. For 4 years, she gathered evidence, dissected Darwin's logic, and built a counter-argument stronger than anything the scientific establishment expected from a woman. In 1875, she published The Sexes Throughout Nature, a direct, devastating refutation of Darwin's claims about male superiority. She demonstrated that Darwin had cherry-picked species where males were larger or more ornamented, and then treated those cases as universal law. She showed that in many species, as most of us can see, spiders, birds of prey, insects, the females are larger, stronger, and more complex. She exposed Darwin's unexamined Victorian assumptions, revealing how he had mistaken cultural bias for biological truth. Most importantly, where was I in the work here reading? She argued that women's limited opportunities, not evolutionary destiny, but lack of opportunities created by the culture, that's what explained the differences that Darwin called, quote, natural, close quotes. Women have been denied education, barred from universities, excluded from scientific societies. Women had been systematically prevented from developing the very qualities that Darwin claimed they naturally lacked. She wrote, quote, "It is the special philosophic problem of the ages to account for anomalies in human society created not by nature, but by the artificial conditions imposed on women," close quotes. Her critique struck at the foundation of evolutionary sexism. Male scientists had assumed male superiority, interpreted the natural world through that lens, and then declared that nature confirmed what they already believed. Darwin never wrote a word in response, but Antoinette's book, circulated among suffragists, educators, and early women scientists, proved that even the most towering scientific figure could be challenged if the evidence was sound and the reasoning was airtight. What it also proved was, even if you've refuted it with sound evidence and airtight logic, they don't have to allow it. They don't have to put it out there, promote it, use it in their own work, acknowledge its value, because everybody creates their own belief system. Everybody's creating their own perception and experience of life. So, the male scientific establishment ignored her, not because she was wrong, but because she was a woman who had proven them wrong. The male scientific establishment believed they had to ignore her, not because she was wrong, but because she had proven that they were wrong. Still, Antoinette kept going. She wrote on science, philosophy, and women's rights. She lectured across the country. She raised 5 children while maintaining a formidable intellectual life. She became not only a critic of sexist science, but a pioneer of women's suffrage. She attended women's rights conventions in the 1850s, fighting for equality when the movement was brand new. 70 years later, in 1920, at the age of 95, she cast her first vote. She was among the last surviving women from those early conventions still alive to see the movement's victory. Antoinette Brown Blackwell lived 96 years, proving that women's intellect is not limited by nature, but by the barriers men built around it. And when Darwin, the most celebrated scientist of his age, tried to claim otherwise, she didn't just say he was wrong. She proved it. Methodically, brilliantly, irrefutably. She took on the giant of evolutionary science, armed with nothing but logic, evidence, and the audacity to believe that her own mind was as sharp as any man's. And she won. Not with rage, not with rhetoric, with science itself turned back against the very man who thought it belonged only to him. Darwin wrote books that changed how we understand life on Earth. But Antoinette Brown Blackwell wrote the book that proved he didn't understand women at all. So let's see if that sparks any thoughts or comments from our predominantly female audience. It's a theme. And the book of Paul and Thecla is another really good way to keep exploring that theme. And perhaps creating something for yourself that would surprise even you. You know, a whole new way of looking at yourself and your role in the world. I wish I had $1, even 50 cents for every person I've dealt with who is female, who severely doubted her own intelligence, her own ability, her own judgment, her own perception. And as I've experienced for decades, it's systemic. It's not a coincidence. It's not that I just happen to attract people who aren't valued. There's a lot that's going on in our culture around the false perceptions, the false beliefs of male superiority. And what that does for young girls raised in the culture, what it does to stymie their own growth is, well, personally for me, it's worth exploring. It's worth doing the work to uncover it so that it can be seen for what it is. There's not a whole lot that has to be done beyond that once we start actually seeing. But if you can see the truth, if you can see the ways that your mind is distorting the truth and creating perception for you that's not a true reflection of the actuality of life around you, then you're truly free. You're free from the negative impact of those false beliefs. And you're free in another way because you get so many more possibilities opened up in your field of view. You get so many more options of ways you can respond to life when you're not seeing it through that distorted filter that says you're not smart enough or you can't trust your judgment.
Dr. Tim, are you going to post a link to that article? Or you mentioned several, at least 4 different resources.
Darn me.
Darn you. Yeah. But I would like to read the article. Who is the author?
Let's see. Yeah, I'm having a hard time coming up with that because I copied and pasted it. What I'll do is I'll copy and paste it and see if I can search for the author of the article. And even if I can't, put that on the mindshiftersacademy.org website under the educational materials as one of those articles on that page.
Okay. Thank you.
So Rebecca Solnit is an author, and she's written, she wrote an article which then became the book, Men Explain Things to Me. And so I was relating within the last 2 or 3 weeks that I'd read an article about Rebecca based on this, Men Explain Things to Me incident. And then I got the book and started reading the book. And so, the revelation, the liberty that comes when you crack through the old beliefs, I grew up getting fed all kinds of stories about the Wild West and Americans the white Americans conquering the savages and protecting people and bringing all this. It was all false. It was all made up, right? Shocking. Well, what if everything you've heard about how women are inferior to men and men are better suited to positions of power, decision making, what if it's all just malarkey that was made up as a system of thought to keep a system of thought in place? So Rebecca Solnit is one. I've talked about We Can Do Hard Things as a podcast. They frequently have very good things about women's rights, and there was a podcast they did last week about what's her name? Watterson, Megan Watterson, 2 G's in Megan, 2 T's in Watterson, who's written a book, The Girl Who Baptized Herself. And it's a book about the book of Paul and Thecla. And just lots and lots of good things to question and open up so that you're living in an observational mode rather than living from a belief mode. Michael Ryce has tapped into this too. I've listened to a couple little things recently from Krishnamurti where he says basically, without realizing it, most every human being is living in the past because they're living from thought. And thought is removed, at least one full step and level removed away from direct experience. And then once you start thinking about something and then you want to put words on it, now you got another. The word is just a symbol of what your thoughts are or the energetic impression you're getting. And then you put a word on that. Now it's removed again from, so there's the felt sense experience of something, there's your thought about it, and then there's the words that you compile to try and communicate that experience or thoughts about the experience to somebody else. And it's layers and layers of trauma and misperception and bias and conflicting motives. Like, why would people say the Bible is the inerrant word of God, and if you don't believe that and accept it, we're going to have to kill you? Because they're going for power, they're going for control. And when you understand that there were motivations for the writing of those words other than, I want to live a better life, I want to be a spiritual person, I want to be loving like Yeshua, if you understand the motivations behind that, and you start living in the question rather than from the belief, now you open up untold, infinite possibilities for things to go better and differently in your life. So, TJ, was there another thing that I mentioned or that I cited? You said I had 4 or 5 in there.
Yes, the book of Paul and Thecla? Book of what?
Paul. St.
Oh,
Paul.
Book of Paul. Okay.
St. Paul and Thecla.
Gotcha.
Thecla. Thecla. And she was a woman who defied the cultural standard and refused to let herself willingly be married. And her own mother called for her to be burned at the stake for that because it was so threatening to the cultural experience. And they went to burn her at the stake, and they, had her all tied up there on top of all the kindling and everything, and maybe they lit it or whatever. And then a storm comes and puts out the fire, so she survives that. I think they said in that story that there's 3 different times that they tried to put her to death, and just natural occurrences prevented it from happening or whatever. And the things that they wanted to put her to death for were, you say that's up and I say that's down, that kind of thing, right? She's saying, wait, I don't want to get married. I don't have to get married. Oh, yes, you do. You have to get married. In this culture, women are property, and she says, no, I don't buy that. Just for that, they wanted to put her to death. So it's a story that was taken out of the Bible, right? It's one of those that was seen as too threatening, in quotes, and it was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Nag Hammadi libraries or one of the other caches of scrolls that they found buried, and they were buried by priests or monks or citizens who valued the truth in the scroll or the authenticity of the thoughts that had been written down. And when the powers that be said all of these books and scrolls have to be destroyed, they hid a few of them instead. So when the purging of the truth of history was happening, certain people all throughout our history, certain people have risen up and said, wait a minute, I'm going to value truth more than physical safety. I'm going to value truth more than fitting in and just agreeing with what everybody else believes. I'm going to honor truth above everything else and let everything in my life flow from that. So anyway, that takes us all the way to the 12 o'clock hour. Thank you, TJ, Susan, other Susans, if you're out there. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And I would invite you to observe. You might find the same thing I have found. What I found is every single time things did not go the way I think they should, they have always worked out far better than I ever thought they could. Blessings.